So I made a video. I don't know. This had to be about 2 years ago. It's on my YouTube page called Tureg Moors Exposed, and I was cleaning up some information because people seem to think that the Tuareg were black people or kinky haired black people. I said no. All them Berbers are not black. This is when people were still arguing and thinking Berbers are black. I had to clean that up in the community. Nobody was on it. So, yeah, Tuaregs are black. No, I said, no. Excuse me. No, Berbers are black. No, Berbers are not black. Well, after I cleaned that up, then they said, yeah, well, Tuaregs are Berbers and they were black. So I had to make my presentation, one of the best videos I made, Tuaregs and Moors Exposed, and I went into about the Moors and the Tuareg and who's who, right? And I told people, no, Tuaregs are white Moors or pale Berbers. You're Tuareg. They're not black. I said, if you see any black Tuareg, he was a slave of the real Tuareg, the white Moor, right? The Berber, the North African. Oh man! So I'm sitting here watching this video on slavery trade routes, and they repeat what I said. Listen.
The history of Timbuktu is intertwined with that of slavery. According to legend, the city took its name from an old female slave who would watch over the well where the herds drank. Timbuktu supposedly comes from the word Tim, which means well in Tuareg, and this woman's first name, Buktu. Today, northern Mali remains a caste-based society. In Timbuktu, ancestry determines rank. Whether somebody is free or captive depends on their name and lineage. At the top of the social ladder are the light-skinned Tuaregs, former warriors who have always owned land and weapons. At the very bottom are the Bellas, descendants of slaves who have nothing apart from their capacity for physical work to rely on for survival. Many still cultivate their former...
So, because the Tuaregs, the slaves of the Tuaregs, became a part of the family. They did the hard labor. As you heard, she said the Bela. And the white Moors, or the Tuaregs, the real Tuaregs, had concubines. A lot of them slave concubines that they stole from sub-Saharan Africa. Right? And generations of these slaves were born. And so they're black Tuaregs, and they're born slaves. Watch.
Fields, aware of their family's slave origins.
My name is Alhad Ak Al-Jumad. I belong to the Eme Didaren tribe. My parents were abused by those with a fair complexion.
My father worked for them, but not today. He was their herdsman, but those with the fair complexion abused him.
L'intérêt des maîtres, c'est de faire croire.
Yeah, any black Tuareg is a slave descendant from a sub-Saharan African.
The landowners have an interest in communicating to the workers that they are slaves, not because of an old balance of power that can be turned around, but because it's nature. They are destined to be slaves.
Il est destiné à être un esclave. C'est une idéologie extrêmement forte.
It's a very powerful ideology. If your blood is considered to be servile, you pass this nature onto your descendants.
Vous la transmettez à votre descendance.
It becomes impossible to escape slavery.
Sortir, du phénomène esclavagiste.
As the slave trade expanded, certain peoples were forever reduced to slave status. Many internalized their condition and ended up viewing their situation as inevitable. By creating entire lineages of slaves, the trans-Saharan trade continually produced workers without resorting to physical violence.
Now, before that, they were talking about how they were just dying crossing the Sahara. And only a certain people had a certain skill to cross the Sahara, and the Sahara acted as a barrier. That's what I'm saying. These sub-Saharan Africans and people was not going from damn Egypt all the way down in there unless they had a special skill, right? So, no West Africans and people just migrating through the Sahara. The people with the special skill, one of them, the Tuareg, and they had them camels. Sub-Saharan Africans didn't have camels. Them camels were able to go through there for 2 weeks without drinking water, right? And they developed the skill with them camels to be able to go through the Sahara. Nobody else did. So the sub-Saharan Africans couldn't cross no Sahara and that barrier. There's always been that barrier.
Throughout the 13th century, more than 1,000 slaves left the Mali Empire every year. They were joined by contingents from Kanem-Bornu, Ethiopia, and Nubia.
Right? Because they were talking about earlier in this, I'm going to come download this whole thing and post it. How Nubians and Ethiopians became slaves of the Arabs who entered Egypt and conquered Egypt. They passed all them Egyptians up, didn't enslave them or fuck with them, and went down into Nubia and Ethiopia to fuck with them. Then they crossed all across North Africa, above the Sahara, to Morocco, all up into Mali, fucking with sub-Saharans, because North Africa wasn't Black Africa. And even in this documentary, he said that the Arabs first enslaved the Slavs up in there. Then later on, they went into Black Africa. And when he said Black Africa, he was talking about sub-Saharan Africa, because they know North Africa was never Black Africa.
All of the roots in that period really are focusing on the Islamic world. And so the roots come from the peripheries and they go into the centers. And very often along these routes that brought slaves into the Islamic world, you see slaves going actually in both directions as well. They tend to go in greater numbers toward the center of the Islamic world, but people are bought and sold everywhere along the way. So that slavery itself is everywhere.
We don't have precise figures. There are no statistics and no systematic studies. But it seems that many more people died and disappeared during the crossing of the desert than of the sea. According to some hypotheses, and some contingents, it was 30%. So 1 in 3 of those slaves being transported never made it to the other side.
The Attar al-Nabi market in Cairo.
These are Egyptians. They're talking about Cairo now. This is what Egyptians look like. Then and now. I even read the Egyptian population today is what the Egyptians was. Basically, the Egyptian population today look like these people. And there are 67 or 68% genetically alike of the ancient Egyptians. this is what they look like. Ain't a black nowhere around in Egypt and stuff, basically, unless you're talking about some Nubians who've been up in there in modern times and stuff like that. And, they got a Nubian village in Egypt.
This fruit and vegetable market on the banks of the Nile that ships used to unload their goods.
These Egyptians.
Today, no one remembers that thousands of captives arrived in Egypt at this location after a 4,500-kilometer trek through the desert.
People don't disappear. People in a land do not disappear, even if they're conquered. No one disappears. No one in West Africa, Central Africa, the Congo, all them Africans who are indigenous there are still there. Britain lived in their damn Ghana. The Ghanaians are still there. People don't disappear. What you see in Egypt today in 2021, if you take your black ass to Egypt in 2021, this is all you're going to see. The people that were there, they're still there.
And its memory are a problem today because they've yet to be addressed by historians. So there's widespread misunderstanding and ignorance of history. And it seems this black presence is considered awkward. For example, the Maghreb region is called Northern Africa, but not Africa. We're told it's a white Africa, totally white, and that black Tunisians, Algerians, and Moroccans are strangers, although they've been here for centuries. In Tunisia, they have dreadful sayings like, "May God not blacken our wombs."
White Africa. It's always been white Africa.
In high school, I was taught this horrible poem in which black slaves are described as people born from the most appalling of all races.
Les esclaves noirs comme étant en effet des êtres issus des races les plus abominables. لا تشتري العبد إلا والعصا معه إن العبيد لأجناس مناكيد من علم الأسود المخسية مكرمة أأهله السود أم أذنه وهو في يد النخاس دامية.
This left a lifelong mark on me.
In the year 1324, Mansa Musa, the new Malian emperor and Sunjata Keita's grandnephew, undertook a pilgrimage to Mecca via Egypt. He followed the caravan routes all the way up to Cairo. This journey marked the completion of a long process, the establishment of a massive commercial trading zone between Timbuktu and Cairo. For the first time, a leader from the south...
Yep, earlier, I didn't record earlier, but yeah, they were saying they was taking slaves to Cairo. Mansa Musa's Islamized ass was taking sub-Saharan slaves and stuff all up to Cairo. Slave trading and going on.
Those in power in the north. The Egyptian historian Ahmad al-Makrizi reported on Mansa Musa's spectacular arrival in Cairo.
On the night of Sunday 15th Jumada 1st, the moon rose completely eclipsed. Then came Mansa Musa, king of Takur, to make the pilgrimage. He stayed for 3 days at the feet of the pyramids as a guest. He entered Cairo on Thursday 26 Rajab, ascended the citadel, but declined to kiss the ground and wasn't forced to do so. However, he was not allowed to sit in the presence of the Sultan. The Sultan commanded that he be equipped for the pilgrimage. Mansa Musa was accommodated and spent so much gold for what he desired, slave girls, garments, that the rate of the dinar fell by 6 dirhams.
Nobody has actually before or after done any trip like that on that scale.
Okay, that's Mansa Musa's story. Right? Anyway, yeah, Tuaregs were white or pale, whatever you want to say. And they enslaved sub-Saharan Africans If you see a black Tuareg, he's a slave descendant. Okay?